This important message has been brought to you by DCN.
The opinions of our guests, hosts, callers, or anybody else that's attached to this frickin' station in any way is their own and not necessarily a reflection of the owners here at the DUNET Communications Network. So, relax.
Okay? Relax. And enjoy the show.
Broadcasting live from the downtown core of Cornwall, Ontario, you are listening to Against the Grain, news you're not supposed to know, with your host, Jurgen Vollrath.
All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to introduce my guest, Ed Rockburne. Ed and I have had a couple of really good conversations over the last couple of weeks. Ed is a former RCMP member. He's a former member of CSIS, and he also served in our military. I salute you, Ed Rockburne. Thank you very much for joining Against the Grain.
Well, thank you for having me.
Listen, Ed, we had talked on the phone, and we were going to discuss this thing that's happening with the seniors across the country, and I'd like you to fill my listeners in on exactly what it is that is happening.
Well, Jurgen, what's happened is that the provincial governments have discriminated against the elderly drivers by claiming that they are the worst drivers on the road and have brought in special testing for them, and it's the worst case of discrimination I've ever seen.
Special testing? What do you mean? Do they pick a certain age or something, Ed?
Well, they say age 80 they must be tested every 2 years.
Okay.
Now, but actually, could I just give some background so that the listeners will be able to follow me better?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay. Actually, what's happened is that about 4 years ago, I was looking at the newspapers, and I kept seeing articles put in in the Ottawa Citizen by the Ontario Minister of Transportation or the provincial government. And in those, they always were making remarks about how poor drivers the elderly are, and they kept saying research shows that indicates that they do this, and studies show that they do that.
Yeah.
And the funny part of it was they never referred to what those studies were at any time, and I thought that was very strange.
Right. They usually refer to studies.
I took it upon myself to go directly to the Ministry of Transport, to their stats and in their website.
Yeah.
And I researched back at least 10 years, and year after year, it showed nothing but the elderly were the safest people on the road. And I thought, my God, that's strange. So I decided to take it further. So I went to the major research institutions, governments, and universities. And I'll give you an example of some of the, just to show you how deep this research was.
Yeah.
I'll give you some examples of those sources that identified elderly drivers as the safest on the road, and by no means is this a total list.
Right.
I would suggest to the listeners to go to our website, which is stopelderdrydriverabuse.ca, and in there, go to the research and evidence and click on, and all of this will be listed there. It's all documented for you to read. Anyhow, here are some of the sources, and I'm just going to do a few because it goes on quite a list.
Sure.
Okay, Transport Canada, Statistics Canada, Insurance Bureau of Canada, Ontario Ministry of Transportation. These are all people that support that the elderly are the safest on the road, by the way.
They support that we are the safest.
Yes. College of Family Physicians of Canada, Personal Injury Lawyers Statistics by David Hollingsworth, Lakehead University Center for Research on Safe Driving, the researchers at the Federal 5-Year Study on Elderly Drivers, the Monash University of Australia International Accident Research Center, which sets the cornerstone for all these studies.
Unbelievable. Ed, listen, we're coming up to a short break there. Hang on to that list.
Anyhow, I won't go any further, but go to our website, and they're all listed there, and it goes on. It's just mind-boggling.
Okay, folks, so you go to stopelderlydriverabuse.ca to get the information, and make sure you don't get your license stolen by these cretins. We'll be right back. You're listening to Jurgen Vollrath on Against the Grain with my special guest, Ed Rockburne.
I ask the question why things they come to pass this way. Now I listen when
Trying to find out what's happening in Cornwall? Wanting to stay informed on current events? Pick up your copy of the Seeker newspaper, your weekly dose of positive news. It's Cornwall's true community paper made for, by, and all about Cornwall people. Read about community events, local news, and more.
Stay current and informed by visiting our constantly updated website, www.theseeker.ca. Like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter.
Stay positive, my friends. Keep calm and read The Seeker.
In a city without superheroes, one local business stands alone to bring those heroes to the community. With over 30 years in the comic book business, Randy Sauve has just what you need to beat the monotony of everyday reality. So escape to the realm of fantasy that is Fantasy Realm today. Located at 227 Pitt Street, Cornwall, Ontario, or call 613-933-7997.
You are listening to Against the Grain, where we're not against the grain, but against the poisons they use to grow it.
Welcome back to the program with my special guest, Ed Rockburne. You're listening to Against the Grain. I'm your host, Jurgen Vollrath. Okay, Ed, so we can carry on. It seems to me like you have one hell of a long list of people and organizations that support the fact that the elderly are the safest drivers on the road, and yet we have a government.
I only mentioned a few.
Sure, no, I understand, and yet we have a government that is basically what you're saying is determined to take these people off the road.
Well, wait till you hear this.
Go for it.
When I had this information, I decided to lay a charge against the provincial government under the Human Rights Act.
Excellent.
Okay, and after about 3 months of bickering back and forth, I received an email from the human rights people, and guess what they said?
What did they say, Ed?
They cannot rule on it because when the provincial government set up the Human Rights Act, they very conveniently exempted themselves and all their departments from the Human Rights Act. That means this government can sit back and discriminate against whomever they feel like, and they are exempt.
They have no repercussions whatsoever.
That's right.
Oh, my God.
So I was just expelled on that basis, that they don't come under it.
Wow.
But I didn't stop there. I finally directly sent a letter to the Minister of Transport of Ontario, and I said, what did you use as your evidence to bring about this discriminatory legislation against the elder drivers of Ontario? And after about 3 months, this is where it really gets good.
Yep.
An executive writes back on their behalf and said, we did 3 in-house pilot projects, and that is what we based it on. And they gave me the dates that these were done. But they have misled me, they have lied to me, and so I said, well, okay, I took that, and I went and made inquiries in Toronto at the Legislative Library.
Okay.
And what they came back with was that the legislation discriminating against elderly drivers in Ontario was on the books before these studies were even completed.
Oh, my God.
So in other words, they did the act discriminated on ageism and discrimination.
Right, and then pass something later on.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to cover their rear ends.
Yeah, of course.
Now, just a minute. Listen to this, though. What they have done, they have violated a number of federal acts.
Terrific.
Okay?
Yep.
In other words, an admission that they had no evidence to justify their policy against the elderly and committed a crime of false pretenses when they inferred that the elderly drivers have more accidents than any other driver group and therefore constitute a traffic risk, while knowing this to be untrue.
Wow.
And this violates at least 3, perhaps 4. Listen to this.
Yep.
They violated the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They violated the Criminal Code on Elder Abuse. They violated the breach of trust. Then they violated the cornerstone of our judicial system, the right to be assumed innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
All of this they have violated, and they still continue this falsehood.
And there's nothing we can do because they protected themselves, right?
They protected themselves, but they didn't protect themselves from all these acts that they violated.
Right.
Okay.
But who's going to go after them for that?
Well, this is another interesting part. Having in my years as an RCMP member,
sure,
actually did work on the criminal code and whatnot, which is a federal offenses.
Yep.
I got in touch with the federal Minister of Justice, Mr. McKay.
Yep.
And I said to him that there's 3 provinces have violated these acts already: British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario. And because of that, it's his duty, sworn duty, oath of office, and as the chief policeman of Canada to enforce those acts and to take action against these provinces.
Yep.
And guess what he sent to me? I had to sit down, I would have fallen over.
Okay, lay it on us.
He says to me, Mr. Rockburne, I cannot do anything about that because the Criminal Code of Canada, which is a federal act, comes under the jurisdiction of the province.
What?
That's what he told. I have it in writing. It's on our website.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I had to wait 7 days before I answered him because I was afraid of what I'd say to him.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I said it anyhow. I got back to him and I insulted him deliberately, hoping that he would take me to court because then I could get to court. I couldn't afford to take it to court myself, but if he took me to court, then I could introduce all this evidence against him.
Yeah.
But he knew that, so he didn't do anything, but he resigned. I hope I was the one that made him do it.
Holy smokes.
So how do you like that? The
Wow.
lies and the deceit is unbelievable.
So they're all in bed together, whether it's provincial or federal.
Well,
I mean, we had a sense of that before. I mean, you just look at the relationship right now between Notley and Trudeau and Wynne and Trudeau and all of that. I mean, it's just beyond the pale. It's disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is that that the provincial governments have passed laws that state that doctors must report those patients they feel may be at risk to drive.
Right.
Or they can be prosecuted by the province.
Oh, great.
Okay?
Yeah.
The trouble with that is they're causing more risk than they're preventing because now patients are not telling their doctors anything for fear of them letting the Ministry of Transportation know and losing their license.
Holy.
And what's happening now is these people are not telling their doctors, they're driving, and they're putting more risk out there.
Right.
And on top of that, it's causing chaos in the society. And out west, I don't know, but out west we have the Alberta started this whole thing. It started with a couple called Bonnie Dobbs and Alan Dobbs, a couple of university professors from the Alberta University. They found a way of making money. She established a Mickey Mouse cognitive test for the elderly to see if you've got dementia.
Oh.
And he established Drive Able, which they convinced Alberta to make the elderly take this Mickey Mouse test, which has no scientific or peer acceptance at all. And they had to take that, and when they failed that, and they fail 50% failure. By their own admission, it's only 50% accurate. So that means there's a hell of a lot of people that are failing that. Then they have to go to her husband's Drive Able, and then they have to pay out of their own pocket hundreds of dollars for tests, and they can test them as many times as they want.
Holy smokes! Wow!
And
I knew there was an attack on the car, but this is going beyond the pale.
Well, BC's worse. BC, by the same people, by the way, that convinced them, Bonnie and Alan Dobbs. Bonnie runs BC completely, and they, in BC, 80-year-olds must take a medical examination and a cognitive test prior to going for their license. That
Right.
there is no accuracy in any, there's no test available anywhere in the scientific world of a cognitive test that is accurate enough to be used. In
Well,
the
especially-
criminal code, we had the lie detector test, which was considered 90% accurate, and it's still not accepted in the courts.
Right, exactly. So how is
Now-
this acceptable?
Right. So these people now are trapped. Now, just to let Ontario people to beware, Bonnie Dobbs is a consultant to the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, and she's been pushing for this, the same thing as what's in BC and Alberta.
Oh, terrific.
So this is what we're up against. And watch your Ministry of Transport. They changed the test just recently, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to introduce that." But that's a lie, because what they've done is they now, to pass your 80-year-old exam in Ontario, instead of passing an exam on road rules and things like that, which has some connection with driving,
Right.
now all they have to do is prove, draw a clock at 20 minutes after 10, and to find the letter H intermingled with letters, with numbers.
Right.
And if they can do that, they can drive a car. Okay?
Yeah.
And how insane is that? Now, but beware, be careful, because what they have done is they've introduced 2 segments of another cognitive test called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and that is their starting point. And watch down the way, they're going to start introducing the other. Now, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment has been poo-pooed; it's not accepted either, and they say 2 segments of it tells you you can drive or not, but the whole cognitive test
God.
is useless.
How many people do you think have been affected by this, Ed? And
Well,
how
I'll
long
tell
is
you.
it? How long has it been going on? Is there hundreds or thousands of people now
Well, I'll
without their
tell
license?
you, right, the last year in British Columbia, just in 1 year, 6,000 have lost their licenses. In Alberta, the last time I looked at it, a few years ago, over 6,000 have lost their licenses there. Many of them unfairly. And here's
Yep.
what scares the living daylights out of me.
Yep.
That Health Canada has come out publicly and said, when you take the mobility away from senior people, and particularly we have thousands that live in rural areas where there's no other
Yes,
transportation.
of course.
What happens is, first, it's depression. Second, it's alcoholism. Third, it's suicide.
Oh, well, they just want that to happen.
Yeah, well, it
It's
seems
part
that
of the
way because they are causing it.
Well, of course it is. But if you study Fabian socialism, this is exactly what they want.
Well, they're getting what they want, and they're destroying people right and left.
Right and left. So you figure there's 6,000, that's 12,000, plus what they're doing in Ontario now. We're probably talking about, 30, 40,000 people left alone in their home. Ed, we've got another short break coming up. I'd love for you to hang on.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Pleasure to be here.
You're listening to Against the Grain on the DCN Radio Network. We'll be right back after this short network break.
Bob.
Come on in,
Bob,
George. Come on.
Bob, I don't know how you do it, man. I get home from work. The wife's just a flopping. You still have all your hair in your head. I don't know. I just need an hour, just an hour after work just to, from 1 till 2 on Saturday would be great.
I
Any
can't help you on
suggestions?
Saturdays, but I can help you on
What
Sundays.
about Sunday? Sunday?
You know what? You
Sunday
need an hour.
would even be
You need
better.
an hour piece.
Oh,
Here's
yes.
what you do: you Put the couch on.
Put the couch on. What? Put her on the TV to watch the couch?
No. Put on.
She's not a blonde.
No, put the show, The Couch on, with Shannon and Erica. It's these two ladies that they talk for about an hour. They don't stop talking. They just keep going. That's how I get you that tip on how to get those stains out of your underwear.
Hey, that worked great. Kudos. Oh, you got it from that show. I should tell the wife about that.
Yeah, you should keep
so it's The Couch on
DCN, on the Do Net Communication
so
Network.
www.donet.ca.
That's right.
I'll get her on it. Thanks. You're a lifesaver.
I wish it was 4 hours long.
This is Pastor Brent Williams, and whether you're listening to The Couch, The Jim and Ike Show, The King's Table Against the Grain, Shirley World, The Dad Show, or my show, Faith Today, you're going to get some great talk show, radio programming in the city of Cornwall and beyond.
Welcome back to the program. You're listening to Against the Grain. I'm your host, Jurgen Vollrath, with my special guest today, Ed Rockburne, former RCMP, former CSIS, and ex-military member, a man who has served this country proudly for years and now sees what is happening. And I just want to throw this out there to everyone who's been listening so far. I've been studying Fabian socialism now for probably 6 or 7 years. The foundation of that society started in 1884, is now rearing its ugly head, and the more you see these kinds of things that Ed is talking about, the more you realize that the people in power, the people that have control over us, they really don't want us. They want us out of the picture. That is why you're seeing euthanasia bills. That is why you're seeing this push for abortion. That's why we have a prime minister who won't include anyone in his party who is pro-life. So we have a situation where people in power and control, like Hillary Clinton, we have people now wanting to abort babies at the age of 3. This is where we're headed. So at the younger end, they're pushing abortion big time. At the older end now, they're causing seniors to lose their licenses, hoping they'll kill themselves so they won't have to pay them any more of their piddly CPP pension. This is the way I see it, but maybe you have a different opinion, Ed.
Well, I don't know what the reason is, but maybe they figure there's too much cost involved in nursing homes and and things like that. But the amount of the money and everything that people on retirement put into the economy, they do far more good than bad. And they're finding out that now people are living so long and healthier. The 80-year-old today is the new 60. And but let's get back to the doctor thing.
Yes.
The Medical Association of Canada has complained about this legislation forcing them to do this and breaking up the patient-doctor relationship. But what is coming out of this is some more sinister things coming out of it. Mm-hmm. For instance, more and more people are reporting to us that doctors are tricking them into cognitive testing and then having their license removed.
Wow.
I had a gentleman call me and he said, "What can I do?" He said, "They've taken my license away." He said, "I went to my doctor, and my doctor said to me, 'Oh, we're doing a clinical test here, Jim.'" I say Jim. His name's not Jim.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
He said, "Jim, we're doing a clinical test. Would you give us a hand and help us by participating?" And he says, "Well, sure." So they gave him a cognitive test. Whatever one it was, I don't know. But a week or two later, his license is removed because the doctor said he wasn't fit to drive.
God, are they getting points for doing this? Is that what it is?
I don't know what it is.
Well, it could be because they do get preferential pharmaceutical stuff when they deal with the drug companies. It wouldn't surprise me one bit.
I know out west, every time they do a cognitive test, the provincial government pays them. Okay?
Yeah.
Anyhow, and those cognitive tests, there is, like I said before, there's none of them that's scientifically accurate, and
right.
None of the scientific world acknowledges it. But anyhow, on top of that, what we're telling our the people that call us, when you go to see your doctor, just protect yourself. Under the Provincial Health Act, any person who treats you with medical treatment must tell you what they're treating you for and get your consent. They're not doing that. They're doing it surreptitiously.
Right.
And that's what's and on top of, I can tell you a couple other stories, but right now I want to tell you that anybody that goes to their doctor, just to be on the safe side, we are recommending that they prepare a withdrawal of consent on any cognitive test that he proposes or his staff, and have him sign it.
Right.
And then, if something like this happens, you can sue the ass off him.
There you go.
Because he's broken the law and it's taken your license is gone. So if you want to get a copy of that, go to our website, and there is a sample copy of a consent withdrawal form. And I suggest that cover yourselves, because there's a lot of creepy things happening. Doctors are doing things that they're not supposed to, and in some cases, one case, I was called by a son of an elderly fellow that had his license taken away, and he said there's nothing wrong with him, but his wife lives somewhere else. They've been divorced. She came to visit and then went to see the doctor, and I think to get at him, she said he shouldn't be driving, and the doctor on his own took his license away.
Oh, my God.
So you see, it can be used for people just to get even with someone that they don't like.
Yeah. And the government's more than happy to comply.
Absolutely. I have a professional friend here, and he's spent $14,000 already trying to get his license back.
What? $14,000?
Yes, and he still hasn't got it. And this is 2 years now. He's been working on it. What happened was his regular doctor went away, and he goes to the clinic, and there's a stand-in woman.
Yeah.
And without telling him what she was doing, he says she put some stuff out on the table and said, memorize these and covered them up and all. Well, it was a cognitive test, but I don't know where she got it from, because I've never even heard of that one before. And what happened was, a week later, he finds out that they've taken his license away. And so he goes, his doctor comes back, his doctor sends in letters saying that he's okay and everything, but they won't accept that. They sent a team to his house to interview him, and they were there for about 4 hours. He had to go to Drive Able. Drive Able's in Ontario, by the way.
Yeah.
And they're known to be hostile to elderly. As a matter of fact, this fellow went out for a driving test with them, and he said there was 2 women in the car, and they were shouting at him in traffic.
Oh, my God.
And they won't let you take anybody else with you.
You know,
I'm telling you, it's disgraceful.
This is just, it seems so evil. Like, it's just evil. It's not right. And you know, earlier in the program, I don't know if you heard, I was talking about this new Bill 41 41 that's coming out, right?
Right.
Where they're making decisions now, bureaucrats, without even talking to the doctors. So I get a feeling that these mandates come down from the provincial government into our healthcare providers, and they have to follow orders or they lose their freaking jobs.
That's right.
That's where I'm feeling.
The government controls them.
Yep. The system controls them. They can't make their own decisions based on their patients' requirements. They have to make their decisions based on the government's demands.
But you see, there's a lot of money being made by some people, like the Dobbs. Because what's happened is this fella here had to pay $700 for each test that they gave him.
Holy jeez, $700.
And that's the going rate in Ontario, by the way.
Oh, God Almighty! It just
Isn't that
doesn't
terrible?
stop. It's just not stopping. They're coming after us, and from every direction. It's just unbelievable.
There's so many issues. As a matter of fact, there was a president of the United States that said this one time, and you may have heard this.
Yep.
That he said, the people only have 2 enemies. One are the common criminal, and the other are their government.
It's the government.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't tell the difference.
That's right. I forget who that was. Was it Reagan or maybe?
I'm not sure, but it's sure right on the money.
Yeah, it's sure right on the money. And look at the speech that Kennedy gave before he was assassinated. Kennedy wanting to go back to the get rid of the Federal Reserve. So follow the money. It's always about the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's never about the people, and the people in power don't care about the people. They care about their power.
Yeah, and the rules that they've got in place are causing more risk now than ever.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's pure and simple discrimination because they haven't got one piece of evidence to justify it.
Well, if you look at the agendas, though, Ed, you know, if you read Agenda 21, if you read Agenda 2030 out of the United Nations, this is the plan. All of this is by plan. If you've read it, what they're doing to the elderly is exactly what they state in these agendas. They don't want us. They want death panels. They want you to prove that you're a legitimate source of something for society, or out the window you go.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Jefferson said that. It was Thomas Jefferson. My producer just
there you go. I think you're right.
There we go. Yeah, Jefferson, the only true liberal that was ever there.
But anyhow, it's a sad state, and somebody has to do something about it. But you see, we have to go to court, and the average person cannot afford it.
Exactly.
And the thing is, unless you're in a penitentiary, or if you happen to be a refugee, you wouldn't have to worry about this.
Well, talking about penitentiaries, and I wanted to talk to you about this, actually, because it was a story that came out this week. Have you heard about Adam Cape?
No.
Going into court in 2012, the young man who was held, he was a First Nations man in Thunder Bay.
No, I didn't hear that.
He was kept in a hole for 52 months without trial.
Mm-hmm. I never heard that one.
And he's still there. He's been kept in solitary.
And what's the reason for it?
In a plexiglass box, in an empty cell box with no windows, with the lights kept on for 24 hours. He has interacted with so few peoples over the last 4 years, he's losing the ability to speak.
No one can justify any inhumane thing to any person in that regard.
You're right,
Ed. Why don't people realize that all we have to do is treat each other the way we would like to be treated ourselves?
That's exactly right. Ed, we got another short break. Can you hang on?
Certainly.
Love it. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
We'll be right back. You're listening to Against the Grain on the DCN Radio Network.
DoNet Communications Network is a grassroots talk radio station run entirely by volunteers with a simple mission. That mission is to give Cornwall and the SDNG area a platform for our voices to be heard and broadcasted to our community and the world. That's right. DoNet Communications Network is also offering the cheapest radio advertising in Cornwall and the surrounding area. Advertise your local business with DCN and become part of a growing network. Be heard, be loud, be locally proud.
Need a photographer? Well, Carol Grant Productions offers photography and photo booth rentals for weddings and all other occasions. With pricing as low as $200, you'll want to book your event today, like right now. Don't forget to mention this ad on the Jim and Ike Show for a 10% discount, because that's how much she loves us. So log on to Facebook and visit Carol Grant Productions to book your session today. Why haven't you done it already? Why are you still listening to me? Go. Do it now.
This is Jason Christoff from Christoff Health Radio, and you're listening to Against the Grain, news you're not supposed to know with Jurgen Vollrath on DCN.
Welcome back to the program. Yeah, Ed, I was talking about Ed Cape. He was a young man. He was 19 years old when he was arrested on minor charges and sent to jail. There he got into a fight and another man died. Now, we don't know if this boy was guilty or innocent with that, but he's been kept now in solitary confinement for 1,560 days. To put this in perspective, if we consider that the United Nations has declared this form of segregation should never surpass 15 days, they did this because it considered one of the worst forms of physical torture. Back in the 50s, there was a guy, Harry Harlow. He decided to find out what happens to people when they're in solitary confinement, and he used rhesus monkeys back then, and I remember he was creamed for it. But every monkey after 20 days was severely damaged. Now we have a kid, and we're not sure how many other cases like this are in Canada where people are being held in solitary confinement without trial for years. And this minister now, the minister in Ontario, has known for 13 days that this boy has been in solitary confinement for that long, and comes out and says, well, we've got to leave it up to the people that are running these institutions to make those decisions. It's not my mandate.
Well, that can't be justified.
No.
However, let me tell you another story. When I policed out in Saskatchewan,
sure.
At that time, the mounted police were entitled to have a lunch for $1.25. Okay?
Wow.
But if you had a prisoner, he was entitled to a lunch for $2.50. All right? I had to take a prisoner to court. But in the meantime, before we got there, we went for lunch.
Okay.
I could only charge $1.25, and he was allowed $2.50. We got into court, and his lawyer brings up the point that how we punish this fella because we only let him have $2.50 for his lunch.
Oh my God!
He didn't realize that we only got $1.25.
Wow.
You know, so that's just putting a little opposite side. But you can't justify the other things that you've mentioned. There's no justification.
No, there isn't. And if it was any other country, we'd be screaming up in arms, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
Human rights violations and all this kind of stuff, and yet we place this blanket over Canada, thinking that we are these righteous people that do everything that's just correct. But when we dig deep, we find what's really going on, and it's very scary.
Getting back to our subject, here's something that people may not realize. They throw out a lot of myths and old thinking about elderly people. Okay, and one of the things they threw at me was, well, yeah, but when the person gets to a certain age, and by the way, Bonnie Dobbs got up in Edmonton on the CBC and said, when a person reaches 65, they're the most dangerous people on the highway. She said that on radio.
Oh, my God.
Because she's drumming up business for her and her husband.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
But listen to this. I went up to the Alzheimer's Society website, in the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, and they always say, well, yeah, but when you get older, you're going to get it. You know, there's a chance you get dementia and all the rest of it, so you're dangerous to drive, right? Listen to this. On their website, it says this: causes of cognitive impairment that could affect driving ability from records of the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, Health Canada, and the USA Health Medicine. The cognitive impairments affect all age groups. It is estimated that there are 747,000 affected in Canada, but only 14% of these are over 65. The rest are under 65. So if 14% are over 65, your dementia, your strokes, dementia, infections, Alzheimer's, head injuries, neutral deficiencies, vascular dementia, high blood pressure, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, Lewy body dementia, Huntington disease, all these are in the people under the elderly.
Wow.
So why don't we give these cognitive tests to everybody?
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so that's another myth.
It certainly is a myth. And, you know, I've been driving my whole life. I used to drive cab for a couple of years when I was a younger man, working in a bank and during the day and driving cab by night. And I drive now, and I see some of the people in middle age. They just, I'm honest to God, they don't know how to drive. And they're telling us that we're the ones that are the worst drivers.
Did you see the Ontario Provincial Police report last year, which came out, and it was a 10-year report.
Yeah.
And they stated that the most dangerous people on the highways and the most accidents are caused by those 18 to 54 years of age, and most of it's by lack of attention, talking on cell phones, operating their computers, distraction inside the cab, and drinking.
Yeah.
And so how and hang can they put this one on the elderly?
But they do.
They do.
Well, and that's, like I said, it's because it's part of the overall program, right?
Exactly.
It's get them at birth. I mean, we want abortions up to the age of 3. That'll save us a lot of money as far as kids go. And we also want to kill them as soon as they're about 80 years old.
There you go.
Right? Because we don't have the financial resources to run this mess that we've got because we put everybody in such debt. Right? That's how it feels, Ed. I mean, it feels like they've just run us into the ground financially and finding every way possible to eliminate us so that they can keep on with their perks.
Exactly. And on top of this, it doesn't start at 80, by the way, in Ontario. People think it starts at 80, but if you feel comfortable because you're under 80, I'm going to tell you something now that should get you thinking.
Yep.
When you turn 70 years of age in Ontario, I don't care if you've been driving 70 years without an accident, and you even taught driving and all the rest of it. If you have one accident, at-fault accident, when you're 70 years of age in Ontario, you are brought into the Ministry of Transport, you're interviewed, you're tested, and they can take your license away.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So it doesn't only start at 80.
It starts younger, yeah.
It starts, but everybody's focused in on this 80 thing. So think about it. And corrections should be made because this shouldn't be tolerated at all in our society.
No, it shouldn't. You're absolutely right. No, there's so much of it going on in our society that shouldn't be tolerated, and yet we have people. You know, talking about the driving thing, Ed, it's really funny. I was in a movie, and one of the younger fellows was supposed to be driving a standard car for this movie. And every one of the younger kids on this movie set didn't know how to drive a standard. Not a single one of them. And these are all kids, late 20s, early 30s. Not one of them knew how to drive a standard. So luckily for me, I got to drive a 1965 Jaguar XL Special Limited Edition $500,000 car because these kids didn't know how to drive a bloody standard.
There's some benefits then for being older.
Well, there's benefits for being older, but I still think, when you learn to drive on a standard, you have way better control of your vehicle because you've got to do so many more things.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you learn on that, it makes driving an automatic that much easier, that's for sure.
It does.
But I've found over the course of my lifetime, there are people that have a natural affinity to drive and others that have to work at driving.
True.
Right?
It's like anything else.
Like anything else, right? Mm-hmm. But for them to just put a blanket on all seniors basically now and basically try to have them eliminated from the road, it's a very disturbing issue, Ed. And I want to thank you an awful lot for doing this today and giving our listeners access to this information that they need to know.
Well, have them go to our website, and everything's there, and have them put it on the Facebook and everywhere that they can advertise it, because something has to be done because people are committing suicide. I know another case where a woman was doing a lot of voluntary work. She was full of life, and she was 80 years of age, and she was driving to all these places and helping people and that. They took her license away, and she willed herself to death.
Oh my God. Oh, jeez, that is so sad.
That's because she couldn't contact anybody anymore.
And I could just picture that kind of person. You can picture it. It's the symbol of motherhood.
Exactly.
Right? The symbol of motherhood. The symbol of all things that are good. Someone who would be willing to donate their time and go, and then they do this to her. Oh my God. It just doesn't stop, does it?
It's sickening.
Ed, you and I were very fortunate. You're somewhat older than I am, but still to live the 50s and 60s and to see what the world was like back then compared to what it is now. Boy, oh boy, what a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, listen, we have to run, Ed. We're coming up to another break. But again, I want to thank you so much for being on our program today, and I look forward to another discussion on another issue because you, my friend, have a lot of information that my listeners need to know.
Well, we can talk later on that, Jurgen. So you let me know, and we'll talk about it.
I certainly will. Thanks again, Ed. Have a great